Hi everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you how to make this complete Spongebob cake. Alright, to get started, I'm going to show you what I did with my cake plate. I've got two plates there that I glued together. I just used little Elmer's glue that I happen to have lying around and let them dry. I needed to make it a little thicker because I'm going to cover my cake plate. I don't normally do this, but it was requested and I said, sure, why not? So I've got some fondant. I'm using fondant and rolled out some green. And once I got it to a nice thickness and it was long enough to cover everything, I laid it out, as you see, over my cake plates, smooth it out, make it nice and flat on top. And I'm going to use a knife and just trim around the edges. I'm going to go flat along the side of the cake plates just to have a nice clean cut. So there's nothing hanging over the sides. It's just nice, sharp, nice and clean. Perfect. Okay, now I am using a veining tool. And if you guys have this veining tool, there's a fat side and a thin side. I went over the whole cake plate with the fat side first and made some big deep grooves. Went back over it with the thin side, made some smaller grooves. And now I have some green dust, shimmer dust, and I'm using a paintbrush as you see, and I'm going over the whole thing, kind of making a mess of it just to give it a little more color, a little texture, a little, make it more interesting to look at so it's not quite so plain. And to clean up all those big blobs that I put on, because I'm not the best at this yet. Still working at it. I'm just using a dry paper towel and wiping it up. Now I've got my cake. I had crumb coated it. I stuck it in the fridge and let it chill for a while. And now I'm going over the sides and the top with different shades of blue. I have a light blue on the top that you see and around the top of the edge. I did a middle shade in the middle, coincidentally enough. Darker blue at the bottom. Now I'm just trying to kind of smooth the sides a bit. Again, this is not where, my talents necessarily shine, but I'm doing the best I can. I smooth the top, I smooth the sides, and I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it because I am going to cover it with a lot of decorations anyway. Now I stuck it back in the fridge again, so it's nice and firm. All my buttercream is nice and firm. This is a 8-inch cake, by the way. And I let it cool off very carefully, move it onto my cake plate. Now I'm rolling out some green gum paste now. I'm going to start making decorations, so I want them to dry, be nice and firm. So I'm using gum paste here. And I rolled out my green, and I'm cutting out these kind of like little slivers as you see here, and I'm twisting them and curling them. These are going to become my seagrass that I'm going to put on the cake later. So I'm just kind of changing the shape a little bit. Some are tight coils, some are just twists. And what you're not seeing is I just laid them on a paper towel to dry. I made a whole bunch of them, and some of them, as you see, I'm making some that I didn't twist at all, just kind of wavy lines to make it look like some more seagrass. I did different shapes, different sizes, and I'm just going to make a whole bunch of them, big and little. Here are some little ones. I'm making them real twisty, just whatever. I made a whole bunch of them and stuck them aside to let them harden. I figured I'd rather have them and not use them, just in case. I'm using a 5-pointed star that I have. I think it was actually a flower cutter of some sort. To make Starfish, I'm using my poking tool there. It's not a poking tool, that's what I call it. And I'm going to keep doing that just to make it have that stippled starfish effect. I use a little circle there for my straw in the center, and there you go, starfish. All right, I took some red gum paste that I had. Again, this is all gum paste. I wanted to hold its shape. And I rolled it out kind of thick as you see here. I'm using the fat ball on my tool there to make a bunch of dents. Going over it with the small one to make a bunch of smaller dents. I'm making the, top kind of wavy and everything. And there you go, instant coral. Now I'm going to show you how to make the SpongeBob flowers. This is how I did it. I kind of cheated. I used 2 different size flower cutters there, the 5-petaled cutters. The big one on the outside, the smaller one on the inside, and then I'm taking that little bit of a outline there. Those are what I'm going to use. SpongeBob, of course, has those quintessential flowers that are always like floating in the sky, and he has them around his house and everything. So I kind of found a cheaty way to make them. I'm also using my little flower stamp set here to make a bunch of little flowers because it's all very colorful in SpongeBob world. And I just wanted to fill it in. So I made a whole bunch of different colors of those too. This is going to become my little swarm of jellyfish. I made a bunch of circles, as you see, a couple different sizes. I trimmed off not half, maybe a little bit less than half. And now I'm going to take a little thin rectangle, you see, and go over the bottom of my jellyfish. I just kind of wrap it around the sides, and I'm pressing in on the sides a little bit with my thumbnails as well to kind of make the sides a little straighter, a little less round. And I did it for all of them, and then I'm going to cut some long, thin rectangles as you see me doing here. Those are going to become the tentacles for the jellyfish. So I am going to just make them wiggly. I'm just kind of curling them and S-shaping them and wiggling them and just wrinkling them up into all different shapes, and those are going to become the tentacles, and when I attach them it's going to look pretty cool. So I have, as you can see, a few big jellyfish and then some smaller ones, so I made some smaller tentacles as well. And now I'm going over each of them and adding some purple dots. I just put some little balls of purple gum paste on them. I'm attaching everything with a little bit of water. I just kind of cut that out because it was a lot of boring paintbrush painting water. And I'm using my ball tool to flatten the circles. I'm putting like 2 or 3 on each jellyfish in different spots. It kind of doesn't matter where they go. And they're also different sizes. You can kind of see that too. And when you put the tentacles on, see how they're gonna match up and look pretty darn cool, right? So once we get them going, it'll look amazing. Now I have gone back to my fondant. This is green fondant. I'm going to end up making a border on the cake with it. So I have one straight line and the other one is wavy. And I'm going to very carefully wrap it around the base of the cake so it kind of hides the seam between the cake and the cake board itself. I didn't make it long enough, so I had to cut a second piece here. That's why there's a part that's already on there, and this messy piece I'm putting on now that you're seeing me do. I'm trying to connect the sides, or the seams, excuse me, as best I can. I use my fondant smoother to make it nice and flat against the cake, so it's not all ugly anymore. I have a number 2 that I made out of some yellow fondant that I stuck on just because the child was turning 2. I am adding my red pieces of coral, and I'm just going to start building at this point. I've got a bunch of flowers, different colors. I did orange, pink, purple, and yellow. I also made the little stamped flowers that you saw me do, that just in the yellow real quick. I've got a bunch of those. I have some gray rocks. This is all made out of gum paste, by the way, because I needed it to hold its shape. So I'm just sticking stuff on wherever I kind of feel like it should go. I'm trying to balance the colors though. Like if I have a pink flower on the one side, like you see here, I'm going to put something pink on the other side. I'm adding the jellyfish and 3 tentacles to each one. And because I made them all different wiggles and shapes and everything, it kind of really gives it a less uniform look. It makes it more interesting to look at, more like they're all over the place. See? Kind of like that. And I'm putting some of those stars down low. Some of them will go up high. Here comes my seagrass, the little pieces, the little ones that I did that I just kind of wiggled a bit, sticking them onto the front of the rocks with a little bit of water. The bigger ones I'm tucking behind just so it has a little bit more support. And you just keep on building. There's some of those coiled ones. I'm going to have some of the spiraled ones too. Kind of keeping it balanced. So if I'm going to have like a coiled and a spiral one, like you see me do on the one side, I'm going to end up adding them on the other side as well. So that way it's, even though it's not symmetrical necessarily, it still is balanced. So it still is nice and even to look at. Just keep adding those flowers. Looking good so far. Now we're going to add some of the really small flowers in our starfish. Don't forget our starfish. I want to say I made 3 of them, and yeah. So I'm sticking them up high, down low, all over the place because we want it to be busy. You want it to be colorful. And the more you do, the more fun it's going to look. Now, I can't forget about the back there. I went ahead and just threw a few flowers on it just to make it kind of fill in so it wasn't completely neglected. I got the rest of my jellyfish going, making them look really cool, like they're swimming around jellyfish fields. As far as the back where the seams were before, I covered one with a rock, and here I'm covering the other with a piece of seagrass. So even though they weren't like the best sneakily done seams blending in the world, it doesn't matter because you just stick a decoration on top and there you go. Like I said before, just keep filling it in, add a little more color as you go. All right, this is going to be the pineapple house, SpongeBob's Pineapple Under the Sea. I rolled out my orange. This is gum paste again because I need this to firm up and dry. That's because it's going to be standing. And I didn't trace it or anything. I really could have if I wanted to, but I just didn't. So I have a flat base, a rounded dome at the top, and the sides are rather fat. It only really starts to taper in down near the bottom of the pineapple, so kind of be careful of the shape of it. I am trying to smooth off my little rough cuts there with my fondant paddle, just to smooth it, make it rounder, not have all those little jagged edges where the knife was like chop, chop, chop. I'm putting it on a paper towel to help it dry, and so when I move it around, it won't, get damaged any bit. I'm using my knife blade. I want to say I was using the back of it, and I'm making indentations to represent the cross hatching that the pineapple has. So I did have a picture that I was following, so I tried to match where the lines start and finish in coordination with everything else. As far as the pineapple goes, I'm kind of rounding off the corners a little bit. See, I'm kind of pressing on the sides of the pineapple and rocking over the top. So you can see it here. It has a little bit more of a defined edges and dips where the lines are. And the same thing with the other side. I'm trying to match it up, trying to make it, make it work as best you can, because eventually when we start adding windows and the doors, I was using it like a grid to try to map out where the pieces should go so it would look more proper. I'm using a brown food coloring marker to go over the lines that I made with the knife. You're going to see that you can see where I messed up a little bit, where I went outside of the groove and made an extra line. I'm going to show you how I fixed it, because food markers are very forgiving. They're very easy to fix. I have a wet paintbrush with just water, kind of mopping around. Get a dry paper towel, suck it up, and there you go, fixed. Like, no problem, real easy. Now I'm putting the little, dots sort of that's in the center of those pieces, the pineapple that's on his house. They're not all the same size or shape, so be careful where you put them, and they don't all have one, so be careful of that too. Now, I've got some more green gum paste. It is going to be the leaves on the top of the pineapple. I just basically cut out some very long rounded off triangles and started putting them on the pineapple, and I curved them and laid them out, and wherever they met up with the pineapple that I liked how it was sitting, that it matched the picture I was looking at, I trimmed off the extra and just put it back in its spot. And I just kept on doing this. I kept on building it. If you follow the picture, you're going to see you're going to have one main center leaf, and then you're going to have a pair coming out on either side 2 more times. And then you're going to have one extra little set that comes out the back and sticks almost out sideways. You can see them in the back there. So you're going to have 7 leaves altogether. And as you can see, all I did was just lay them on top of each other and match them up and put little marks in them and then trim it out so that it became one layer thick. It was no longer stacked on top of each other. I used water to reconnect them, make them all stick together to each other, and then stick them on top of the pineapple. Here you can see I'm putting all my little jigsaw pieces back together. Now this did make it more fragile, so with all these little pieces, they became weak points. So when I was standing up the pineapple, it wasn't as strong as it otherwise could have been. So you got to be careful of that if you decide to follow this technique. You're going to see I end up putting a lollipop stick on the back to give it support, and that made all the difference. It made it work fine. Okay, getting back to the pineapple though, I used some green food coloring and water to paint the leaves, and now I'm using a little bit of brown food coloring and water to paint over the lines. If you look at the pineapple, it's got some pretty interesting shading and highlighting going on with the sections of the pineapple, so that's what I'm trying to emulate here. I just went over the lines. I didn't go crazy with it or anything, but it came out pretty good. I'm using my marker here to just draw a center line on the leaves of the pineapple. And it kind of messed up a little bit with the more food coloring where I had painted it, but it was okay. Now I've got some gray gum paste. Once again, making my circles. Got a big circle, cut out the smaller circle, so I'm left with a ring. Those are going to become the windows of SpongeBob's house. I'm going to have my 2 rings of gray here, and then I'm going to roll out some light blue. As you can see, I rolled that nice and thin, so it's going to sit lower than the window frames, and I use the circle that I cut the inside of the gray out so it all matches up, matchy-matchy. And then I'm going to stick it on my pineapple. There you go. And this is where I was talking about before the grid work comes in, where I could kind of map out. It was like a little cheat code for me to know where to put the windows. I ended up having to move that bottom window a little bit when I add the door, you're going to see in a moment, because it didn't quite match up. Because again, my lines were a little off, I gotta say. Yeah, they just weren't quite perfect. Now, I am adding little balls to the windows because they kind of have the rivets on it, looking like, I don't know, submarine or boat portholes or something. So that's what I did there. Just a little bit of water, press the balls into place. Here comes my door. I've got the gray, made my very clean and perfectly formed arch there. Trim off the bottom. You can't make it too big. You've got to be careful the size of the door. It's actually pretty small compared to the size of the pineapple. And it's centered, so that's where I had to move the window over. It was too close at the bottom. So make sure the door is centered on your pineapple. I cut out a long thin piece, as you see here, to frame it out. This is all just the same color gray. Trim off the extra, and then you're going to add more of the little balls to make the rivets. I added them all around the door on that little frame that I just put on there. I added a bunch of them, but technically I think it was supposed to have had more, but I don't think anybody looked at it and counted and saw that I cheated a little. Okay, I got a circle there, as you see. I'm kind of hollowing, well, not hollowing, just pressing down in the center to make a bit of a well. Put a ball in the center of that. That's going to become the doors, I guess it's the doorknob or the door handle. I'm using some, like, they were balls, but more oval, more long than round. And I'm going to put those around my little centerpiece there in the middle of the door, because it looks kind of like a ship's steering wheel that he uses to open. And now I am going to cut the little chimney pipe for his house. Basically make a letter L. The top of it flares out a little bit, as you can see, to the right-hand side of it there. And I'm going to cut a second little piece. I'm going to make a square and then wrap it around the bend. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a patch or something, but it looked like that in the picture, so I was trying to emulate it again. I'm going to use my food coloring marker to put the dots where the rivets are and just kind of trace some of the lines and folds in the metal, I guess it is, because it wasn't really showing up using the same shade of gray on top of the gray. But once you get it all done, stick it on, let it dry. Okay, this sat overnight. I did end up having put a little bit of powdered sugar on the back to just help it dry out a little bit, because it was crazy humid when I was making this cake and it was taking forever for things to dry. And I mentioned before about the green leaves at the top, how they weren't very strong or securely attached to the orange of the pineapple. That's what I did. I used that lollipop stick there. I put some gum paste on it and connected everything to it. I ended up putting 3 lollipop sticks on them just to make it really stable. I took some more gum paste that I happen to have. I made the kid's name, put some little pink spots on it to kind of give it a Patrick feel to it, and stuck it on the cake. That little piece of green is just some more gum paste so that when I put my SpongeBob and Patrick figures on the cake, it'll have a nice place to sit and won't just sit straight in the icing. I added a few little beads, little candy beads, to make it look like bubbles, because why not, right? More is merrier. And now I'm going to put my pineapple in. It's sat for another day as well. Like, it took several days to make this pineapple and have it dry. You don't want to rush it, so give yourself plenty of time. Okay, to begin with our SpongeBob, we're going to start with yellow gum paste. I rolled it out pretty thick. It's maybe half an inch thick or so. And I'm cutting it into a rectangle. I'm using my veining tool here to just put, I think I put 4 indentations on each side. Well, the 3 sides. I put it on the top and the 2 sides. And I rolled it around, you can see. So I made sure to get the front corners and edges as well as the back corners and edges. I'm rounding off the top 2 little corners there because SpongeBob is kind of like when you draw a cloud when you're a little kid, it's just loop-de-loop-de-loops, little humps everywhere. That's what you're going for. I put 2 hollows there in the center with my ball tool. They're very big. Watch the spacing. His eyes do touch in the center, so you're going to want them real close together. So as I'm putting in the balls of white gum paste, I'm going to press them together And you see how they're kind of humping out a little bit? That way they will actually connect just a little bit in the center there. Okay, now I'm using this black gum paste. I cut it rolled it really, really thin. And I'm going to cut really long, thin little rectangles. And even those were too thick, so I ended up splitting them in half. These are going to be SpongeBob's eyelashes. He has 3 to each eye, and they are very noticeable and distinct, but they're not real long, and they're very straight. They're not curly or curved or anything like that. So I have one in the center, one off to each side of that center one, and keep them more to the top of the eye. Don't put them off to the side at all or anything. Just very much, very much at the top. Very short, very rectangular, very squared off, you might say. I'm using that same thickness of gum paste. I cut a long strip as you see here, and I put it on his face, curved it around to make his smile. It goes up into the corners of his eyes, so I'm using my X-Acto knife to cut it so it just kind of tapers up into the corners. And I'm going to end up covering it with his cheeks. You'll see that in a moment. And what I'm doing right now, though, is I've got some very light blue, and I am using 2 small little balls of it to do the pupils, or excuse me, the irises of his eyes. His eyes are a very nice blue, but when you place them, make sure you place them toward the center, almost like he's cross-eyed. He's not quite, but almost cross-eyed. And keep them small. He has much more white going on to his eyes than the color. I'm using a little bit of black dot in each one. There you go. And you can see he's got the pupils now. Okay, this white is going to be his teeth. I rolled it out really thin, just like that black, and I'm just going to cut out 2 little squares, as you see. And what I did is I placed them close together, but so they're not touching, and I'm using the circle cutter that kind of followed the shape of the smile that I made to cut curves out. So now those teeth will like line up right with the black of the mouth. And the bottom of the teeth, you see me use the blade there, I lined it up. So his teeth are actually like flat across on the bottom, and they just go up into the smile. I'm using 2 little yellow balls of gum paste to top off his cheeks. They do overlap the eye a little bit, so watch where you place them. And now I'm going to make his nose. I have a little piece of dried spaghetti. I put basically like a Tic Tac size piece of gum paste on there, and make it kind of light bulb shaped, so it's bigger on the end than in the center. Just press it into place. There you go. See, he's got a cute little face. This brown, if you can't guess already, is going to become his pants, his square pants. I roll it nice and thin once again, cut a rectangle, and I'm just going to wrap it around him like a belt, basically. I was doing that right there just to see how straight I made my cut, which turns out was not very. It definitely got fatter as I went along down the line there. But fortunately, that's okay, because I only need a little bit of it. So I wrapped it around, trim off the extra. I had painted a little bit of water around him first before I wrapped the brown around him. Make sure it's at the bottom of his body, so there's no yellow showing out, no little hiney showing from the bottom there. And now I'm going to do the same thing with white. I cut a strip. I did much better this time. I didn't show you, but when it matched up, it was much better. Proud of myself on that one. And again, just wrap it all the way around. Pick a back corner edge or something to match them up. Cut them off where they meet and just press them into place. Yeah. I'm using this ball tool, the small part of it, to make a couple little ripples in the front of his shirt. Because if you look at pictures of him, his shirt doesn't go straight across. It's like the yellow of his sponginess comes out a little bit and kind of causes little dips in it. Those 2 little white triangles I made are going to be the collar of his shirt. I just stuck them on there. I'm not going to actually place them until I make his tie, which is what I'm working on here. I cut out a red diamond, and I'm going to end up trimming it to make it fit. This was just to get me started. And then you cut out a triangle. You see what I got going there? It's a little too big, so I cut off the top, and you cut off the bottom, so it's no longer pointed. It's got a flat bottom. And then you're going to trim off the flat tip or the pointed tip at the top of your diamond for the body of the tie. And again, like I said, I trimmed it off to make it a little smaller. It was a little too big, because his tie should extend about halfway down his pants. It doesn't go all the way down, so be careful of how you do that. Okay, moving on. Again, here we go. We're doing his arms and his hands now. These are super skinny and kind of long, but that's okay. We'll trim them as we need. I flatten the end of each one, and then I trim a little triangle off center on the inside of each one, and that's going to separate the thumb from what's going to become the rest of his hand. And then I go ahead and make a couple little cuts, just like that. He's got 4 fingers, not 5, so be careful of that. And I trimmed them off and round them up a little bit so they look nicer, and I did it with both hands. So now he's got a right hand and a left hand. And what I did here was I bent his hands right at the wrist. So now it will be attached to his body, and it'll look like his weight is being supported on his hands, like he's got straight arms with just his hands bent holding his body up. So I've got the one arm with the hand bent. I took some white, as you saw, that I'd rolled out, trimmed off a flat edge for the bottom of his sleeve, because that's what I'm turning these into, and round off the top nicely, and then stick it on his body. And you don't have to worry too much about the placement of his arms or the sleeves, because somehow in SpongeBob land they move all over the place. His sleeves just detach from his shirt and fly all over his head and body, wherever they need to go. So as long as you have your arms straight and your sleeves up, it looks pretty good, right? Not too shabby. I'm using a food coloring marker here to draw the marks of, I guess it's his belt of his pants. And I did it on the front, and I did it on the sides, which you can't see because his arms are in the way, and on the back. All right, now these are going to be his legs. I am using a piece of dried spaghetti that I am threading through the gum paste that I rolled out. You saw me very briefly roll it out. You want these legs to be skinny, like his arms were skinny, but these are skinny. Okay, so I trimmed off the extra, as you saw. I rolled it out again, trimmed it off some more, got it to a good length, and now I am going to add the pants. As you can see, I rolled off kind of like a little sausage there. I'm hollowing it out to kind of flare it out. So when I thread the brown onto the leg, that hollowed out area will kind of wrap around the leg. So now his pants cover his leg, and his leg is coming out from his pants. They are not the same thickness. So you see what I got going there? You see how it fits in? Now what you did to the one leg, you're going to do it to the other leg, but match them up so you make sure they're the same length, because you don't want them having one really long leg and one really short one, because that would look weird. And again, I'm using just another piece of dried spaghetti, sticking it on in there. If you decide to use dried spaghetti like I'm doing, you got to use regular spaghetti. You can't use like the whole wheat or rice or anything like that. It doesn't work, I don't know. And I use this instead of toothpicks because I don't want any kids getting hurt on decorations. Kids will grab them and bite them. And my son was one of those kids who ended up getting stuck on a toothpick. So not on my watch. My decorations are all safe, and this is why I'm doing it this way. This is why sometimes it's harder. Okay, I'm sorry. I made the shoes. I made 2 black teardrops basically, and then flattened a ball and put it at the base of the teardrop, and then pressed it on, and those became his shoes. And I'm going to cut out 2 little squares. You see I got it going right there? Pressing it onto the bottom of his foot, and those become the heels of his shoes. So now he's got his little black dress shoes that he always wears. All right, red and blue markers, here we go. Putting the stripes on his socks. I just drew them on. The blue goes on top of the white sock. The red goes next. And this is one of those things, I shouldn't have done it this way, honestly. I think it would have looked better if I just cut really skinny little pieces of red and blue, because the white wasn't dry yet, so it didn't draw as well as I hoped it would. I could have done it better. I'm using an orange edible food coloring marker to make his circles or his spots on his body. And I followed the picture that I had of him on where I placed them, and they all kind of angle to the one side. So when you do this, pay attention to the location and how many there are. Pay attention to the direction they go. And yeah, SpongeBob, right? Not too shabby. All right, what would SpongeBob be without Patrick? I am starting out with a big piece of pink. It's not true pink. It's actually got a little bit of maroon in it. So he's kind of like an off pink. He's not quite pink, so watch your coloring. As you can see, I kind of made basically like a fat rounded Hershey Kiss. I took some nice light green, made a circle that I flattened out there, kind of just a pancake basically. That's going to become his pants, or his shorts, I guess. His bathing suit? Yeah, I guess it's bathing suit. I pinched off the top to make it connect up with the pink of his body pretty nicely, but there is a seam there, and I'm not worried about it. You're going to see what I'm going to do in a second. But first, I'm going to ram him through with a lollipop stick because he needed the support. He was kind of slopping down on top. I'm taking that same green as before, roll it out nice and thin, and I'm cutting a long strip. And I'm going to use this to make the waistband of his shorts. And like I said before, that little bit of a sloppy seam we've got between the 2 colors, no problem, because this little waistband's going to hide it all. I used some water to paint around the edge. I connect it in the back so no one has to look at the ugly seam. And just very carefully place the two together. And there you go. See, already he's looking very SpongeBob-y. And it's funny because my husband saw me working on this video and he's like, why did you make a pink Hershey kiss? I'm like, oh, no, it's not a Hershey kiss. But anyway, that little ball right there, I pressed in the top so it sticks out a little bit at the bottom. That's his belly button. And this bit of pink is going to become his leg. It is, as you can see, just a very gentle little cone. I rolled it in my hands. There's nothing special here. I flatten it on my surface that I'm working on. Taking some more of that same green. I'm going to cut that piece and watch what I do. I kind of just flatten it. That's it. Just like you made his body with his shorts, you're doing the same exact thing to make the leg. You're just going to seal the two together with a little bit of water and then press it onto his body. Make sure that the leg connects underneath that waistband though, otherwise it's going to look a little bit weird that his legs are coming out like his waist instead of more under his body. Alright, this bit is going to become his arms. They're very short, so pay attention to that and pay attention to the location. I cut it off at an angle there and I'm just flattening it between my fingers, making sure not to lose too much of the roundedness on the other end. A little bit of water painted on there and place it on his body. Keep them low on his body. You see how it's just barely above his waistline? That's where you want it to be. He's very kind of relaxed and melted kind of in his body structure, so everything is very hung low. This ball of white that I'm flattening into an oval is going to become his eyes. You can see I already attached the one there. And these, you don't want the same size. His one eye is usually drawn bigger than the other. So be careful with that if you want to do it that way. I chose to. His pupils are just black beans. They're not circles, so be careful of that. And again, like SpongeBob, they're more placed toward the center. I'm going to do something pretty tricky here, so pay attention. This is pretty good. This is going to be his eyebrows. His eyebrows, if you look at them, are kind of like an equal sign with a line through it. It's kind of like a letter Z almost, so that's what I did. I rolled it out really thin, and then I bent it into a letter Z and just crimped it up real tight on itself, and then placed them carefully over his eyes. It looks pretty good. I was like real proud of myself on something as silly as his eyebrow. But that's where the details go in, right? The details are what matter and make the difference, and it came out pretty good. So I did the same thing. It's another letter Z in the same direction. It's not even the opposite direction. But when you place him over top, it really suits him, right? Now I'm taking another thin little piece there and making a very gentle little smile off to the side. I'm not having it centered. It's just kind of cocked over to the side. Using my pink food coloring marker and just putting a couple little pink dots here and there on his body. Don't go crazy. Don't give him chicken pox or measles or anything like that, but you do want to give him just a little speckling of freckles there. And now I'm using some purple marker to draw on the flowers on his suit, and when he's dry, stick him on the cake. Stick SpongeBob on the cake, and we're not done yet. We're going to add a couple more of those flowers that we made. This is where it's really important that they're nice and dry. Add a couple of them on each side. Looking good because he has those little bushes, you know, around the sides of his pineapple. I'm adding a couple of those straight pieces of seagrass because it was kind of boring and I felt like it needed something else. Add a little bit more color with some of those little extra flowers that we made. Put it all together and you've got yourself a really cool SpongeBob and Patrick birthday cake. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe because I find that helpful. I've got a lot of videos out there, so please feel free to check them out. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.